I'm going to show you how to nest automations on AgentHub. So that is a way of packaging entire builds like this as a simple node that you can reuse elsewhere in more complex automations. This is a great way of keeping your builds organized and understandable as things get more complicated. What does a nested automation look like? We can go to our automation library and see some of the ones we have available. I'll drag this one in, for example. This is a real estate listing scraper. Now, this node looks a little different. It's because it's actually a completely separate automation in itself that expects an input for home website, and the output is the scraped information. If I hover over it and click link, we can see what this automation looks like. It is kind of similar. It takes in a URL and it scrapes that URL and then does a bit more complex data extraction on it and then renders an output. Now, this is awesome because we don't have to copy paste this crazy build into another build. We can just reuse this little Lego block here. Let's try to convert the automation that we've created over here into a nestable automation to simplify things. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this Google Sheets reader. And I want this automation to just take in a single link and give me a single blurb of output about that. So I'm going to undo the list mode stuff. And I'm going to save this automation as website processor. Okay, now I want to reuse this in a separate build. So let's go ahead and make a separate build. I can go ahead and look at my automation library and I see website processor. Now I'm going to drag it in and we're going to see a problem right away. It does not have any inputs or outputs. You aren't able to feed any data in. It's just a kind of a dead block. This is because we didn't include any input and output nodes on this automation. So I'm going to go visit it. And all we're missing at the top here is an input node. This is how you can dynamically define those little circles for input data. So I'm going to pass this in because I want the contents of this input node to be the URL that's scraped. And I'm going to call this URL. We're going to do something similar for the output. We want to name it and define what data is flowing into it. So I'm going to call this data. Now if we hit save, and then we go back to this automation builder and just refresh the page, drag it in again, we now have the same node with it's expecting URL because we specified this is called URL, and we have data as output. We can recreate this Google Sheet reader quite simply. Now we drag in the Google Sheet node, we pick the sheet like before. Okay, now we have our Google Sheet reader, and this is giving us a list of items. This automation that we've just built is actually only expecting one item. So what we do, we connect them, we're going to see the issue, and we can just put it in list mode. So it will run this entire automation on each item in this list. This is much simpler than our previous experience of clicking list mode on all these things. Imagine if this was 100 nodes and super complex. It's much simpler to just build for one instance and then loop it at a higher level. So that is how we nest automations. I'm going to drag an output node here so we can see what the output is, and then just hit run. All right, it's done. It ran this nested automation for each value in this sheet. Like we mentioned, this sheet only has 3 links, so it ran it 3 times, once for AgentHub, once for Cruise, and once for OpenAI. And then we aggregated the data here. You would want to do something with this data, like write it to a document or to your database or whatever you wanted to do with the data. But that is a quick overview of how you nest automations on AgentHub.